Welcome to the Disruptor Network podcast.
The Disruptors Network is back with our very first podcast. Myself, Aloha, and Vicky have an amazing guest for you, Chris Voss, CEO of the Black Swan Group and author of Never Split the Difference, which has been a New York Times bestseller for years. Chris was the lead negotiator for the FBI for 25 years, and he was awarded the Attorney General's Award for Excellence in Law Enforcement. He was trained at Harvard Law School and Scotland Yard. Chris's book has been one of the best tools I've ever used for sales and just negotiating my daily life. He also has an amazing masterclass that taught me even further on how labeling people can help my business. This is something you don't want to miss, so now, Chris Voss.
Ignition. Liftoff.
Welcome back to the Disruptors Network podcast. We have an amazing guest today. We've been super excited about this. We've been waiting for this for weeks.
Yes.
Been anticipating this for a long time.
Very long time.
We have Chris Voss, who's the CEO and founder of Black Swan. He also wrote Never Split the Difference, which, full disclosure, Chris, I've read it, I think, 3 times at this point now, and it's the first book I recommend to my salespeople. So it had a big impact on me. And Chris was also a lead negotiator for the FBI for many years. And he has a masterclass that we've also all taken. So I don't want you to think we're super fans, but we're kind of super fans. So welcome.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here with you guys today. It'll be fun.
So, just kind of in starting, and again, the idea around the show is that everybody's kind of talking about what the history is and how they got to a different level. And in reading your book back again recently, before you became this all-star FBI negotiator, you actually started with the suicide hotline. Was kind of like your training to be a negotiator.
Right.
And I almost wanted to start there. Like, how did that get you into a mindset where you kind of went to these different, completely something opposite, and went to a different level of negotiating and kind of just dealing with people?
Yeah, well, it was interesting. I mean, because what it really was, an immersion class, so to speak, on emotional intelligence. And it was empathy. And empathy is an overused term these days, but it's mostly used as sympathy and compassion, and that is not what it is. Understanding, it's a compassionate thing to do, to fully understand where somebody's coming from, but it's really just getting a good handle on the situation as to what the other side's point of view is. It's information gathering. And it's not just understanding, but showing that you understand. It seems very indirect, but it happens to be transformative for the person that you're demonstrating the understanding to. And so on a hotline, they might be in crisis, they're struggling with whatever aspects of their lives are, but they're people that call a hotline have all the same struggles that everybody else has. They just happen to have gotten more intense. But the difficulty in overcoming those struggles and making good decisions is enhanced if somebody demonstrates understanding towards them. So if you take that idea and put it into a business or personal relationship, people want to cooperate with you. They want to listen to you. It clears their head and it clears your head. And what it does is in business and personal life, it accelerates outcomes. And it all started, just trying to understand people on a hotline and show them that I understood.
So I'm going to follow up really quick.
Yeah.
You mentioned something. I was listening to one of your interviews with Lewis House, and you talk about emotional currency. You said you don't want to solve anything with your money. You rather solve it with emotional currency, which I think is very powerful. How do you, give me like specific lines, how do you get to that point where you're having a negotiation with someone else and you want to sort of break their walls down to get to that emotional empathy? Give me some lines we can use.
Well, a favorite conversation of mine recently was, and it happened to be a female in a negotiation with her landlord a few months back, while I was still in the midst of the pandemic. And, this is emotional intelligence-based negotiation, which women pick up faster than men. Now, in the top performance categories, and it's gender neutral. It doesn't matter whether you're a man or a woman. What really matters is are you coachable? Are you willing to learn? Are you willing to learn from your mistakes? But I do know that women pick it up faster than men. They're not necessarily better at it. They get a head start sooner than men because I think nature is not nature, but nurture. Women are nurtured from an earlier age than men are to be emotionally aware. And so you kind of got a head start on us. But again, it's
Good to
gender
know, guys. It's good to know.
the top end, it's gender neutral. All right. So anyway, woman's in a negotiation with a landlord. It's probably about 8 months ago, so now, but in the midst of the pandemic. Now the landlord wants to raise the rent. And the landlord's willing to kick her out. Now, in the middle of the pandemic, nobody's getting kicked out. Even if people want to evict you, you got to go to court to evict somebody, and the courts aren't open.
Right.
So, it's a risky move for a landlord to raise the rent. But it doesn't matter that it's a risky move because the landlord's still got bills and they're still under all the same pressures, and their bills aren't going down. They got utility bills, taxes, mortgages, all these other expenses. But it's still a dumb move. Now, as the tenant could say, look, I got all the leverage here. You're not kicking me out. And the courts aren't favorable to kicking tenants out anyway, and it takes years and years. And any tenant can turn into a nightmare for a landlord. And really, in this situation, a tenant has all the leverage. And if you're thinking of leverage in a negotiation, you've already lost because it's going to be a fight. And if it's a fight, then the other side is going to do everything they can do to hurt you. It's a downward spiral. So despite the fact that she's got leverage and logic on her side, she doesn't take any of that approach. What she says to the landlord is the landlord's reality, the landlord's perspective. And she says, look, your bills aren't going down. You still got utility bills. You still got taxes. Just because it's a pandemic doesn't mean that any of your financial burdens have eased at all. And then she does the critical thing, which is hard for everybody to do in this moment. She shuts up. Because after you lay out empathy, you don't want to follow up with why somebody's wrong or why they should see things differently. You got to shut up. Like if the words but or and are getting ready to come out of your mouth, it's a sign from the universe for you to shut up.
Brilliant.
So she lays out the landlord's perspective and she shuts up. And the landlord says, yeah, but if keeping you as a tenant, if not raising the rent is going to keep you as a tenant, I'm not going to raise your rent.
So she played on empathy. Yeah. She played on empathy instead of leverage, which is interesting because usually when you have leverage, most people, it's like the low-hanging fruit that you use that first.
I think most of us instinctively think that we use that as,
You'll get what you want. Empathy is both a short-term play and a long-term play. Now, leverage is only a short-term play. Only. And for people to survive in business, you got to make the long-term play. You got to have long-term relationships. You don't want to leave a string of people behind you that feel wounded because you use leverage on them. You never know when you're gonna need them again. One of my examples, happened to be in DC today. There's a company, Nick Nanton, is a guy that does documentary films, and he's doing a documentary film on the Black Swan Group, and we were talking about the methodology. And so naturally, I got a free upgrade to a suite here in the hotel that I'm in because we're always practicing our negotiation skills. And it's a little bit of a competition between me and my son, Brandon, who runs my company. Brandon almost always gets a better room than I do at the front desk negotiations. And he's very proud of that. But I won this time. I got a better.
got it.
But we're talking about the whole suite upgrade thing. And, I was talking to my landlord in Vegas about suite upgrades a couple months ago. And he has a line that I've been very tempted to use and sounds like a lot of fun. And I'll tell you what it is, and I'll tell you why I don't use it. So we're talking about suite upgrades, and he's checking into a hotel. and he comes up to the counter and he's looking for a suite. And they say, we don't have one. And he looks at him and says, you mean to tell me that if the president of the United States came in here today, you wouldn't have a suite for him? And the guy behind the counter said, well, of course we would. And he said, all right, so the president ain't coming. Give it to me. Now that sounds like a lot of fun to say. And the bottom line is with that method, he's got one suite upgrade story. And with the empathy approach, we've got 20. Now, what's the catch? If you use that sort of an argument or clever approach to get the suite upgrade, the person behind the counter doesn't feel great about it. They kind of feel like they got beat up. They feel like they lost. Now, the last hotel I was in that I got the suite upgrade in, my plans changed dramatically overnight. And the very next morning, I went back up to the front desk to check out. Now, I'm inside the less than 24-hour cancellation time to get out of there for that night, and they are completely within their rights to charge me for a night I'm not even going to be there. Now, if the people at the front desk are still stinging from my clever president line the next day, when I come back and want something else, they're going to say, we got this cancellation policy. There's nothing we could do.
Right.
There's a phrase, never be mean to somebody who could hurt you by doing nothing. That's when people say, sorry, there's nothing we could do. Instead, since I didn't use the suite upgrade line or the presidential upgrade line with them, I took a completely different approach. When I came in the next morning, I said, look, I'm sorry. I know this is my problem. It's my problem. Because again, in empathy, when you come to somebody with your problem, they think that's your problem. So you start out by saying like, this is my problem. And since they still felt good about me from the day before, they go, no, what is it? What is it? What's going on? How can we help you? I said, my plans have changed. I got to leave. And I know this sounds really selfish of me because I'm leaving with less than 24 hours, but I don't want to get charged for it tonight. And no, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. You're leaving early. We're going to be able to clean the room. Somebody else is going to come in anyway. Don't worry about it. And I was gone. So leverage never leaves you in a position to follow up and get more good service because the leverage hurt them when you got what you wanted the day before.
That's interesting.
Yeah, that's right there.
And it's very interesting because like I remember I was reading, I think it's in the master class. I think it's in I think it's episode 3 or 4. I rewatched it again last week too. So this is like the third time that I've done it. And you said that because some types of like negotiations, some cases are very different, and so you have to focus less on what they want and more on what drives them. It's very similar to even when it comes to like the suicide like conversations that you're having on the phone and stuff like that, where it's less about even if it's someone that's robbing a bank, all these different like situations, but they're all very similar. Where it's like a lot of times it's not necessarily what they're asking you right up front, even when it's the landlord situation and any of these things. Right. It's really what's driving them, and it seems very similar right now, even with the hotel situation. How do you blend that within a lot of like business negotiations that go on, where a lot of the times every single person that's negotiating, they have something that they want, but it's very hard to get them down to what is driving them. For instance, like I was just telling them before we started recording, where yesterday I was in Dominican Republic and I was bringing back gifts for everybody and stuff. So I was getting some paintings, and there was some really cool paintings on the strip that I was at. And the one, I first saw one and I knew it was going to be cheaper than the other ones. So I picked that one out first. I was like, I want this one. I'm like, what's the best price that you have for me for this? And he gives me a price, but he wouldn't work with mine. But he brings it into the shop, and I'm starting to realize that he's willing to negotiate. And they have this one word, it's called entrenate in Spanish, which means that they're really just trying to feel you out. They're trying to see what's going on. And they continue to use this word throughout the whole strip. Everybody's using it to negotiate. And so once I realized that he's willing to negotiate with these things, I'm like, all right, let's see what's up then. So I go outside and I go and I pick purposely the top piece where on the top row of like, this is the piece that I want. And originally he wouldn't give me my price for the one that I know was cheaper. But now I saw that he was willing to negotiate, so I'm like, okay, so let's work with this. And when I realized that that word that they were using is very hard to translate into English, but it's really like I'm trying to start the day off because it was like 7 in the morning. And when I realized that what was driving him, it wasn't the fact that he wanted money, was the fact that he was trying to start his sale for the day to start getting the ball rolling. You know, where he was selling, the last time he sold that painting, it was like $120 he was telling me. Could have been him just lying so he could try to get some higher price from me or something, right? But it ended up being that I negotiated him down to 36 because it had nothing to do with the price of the painting, but it had the fact that he was driven by something else. And I found that interesting because a lot of times when you're negotiating with people, it's almost like this versus this. Like, this is what I'm gonna give you and this is what I want. You know what I mean? But it has less to do with how you're being driven and what is the actual thing that is working. So when people come up to you with like business negotiations, how do you help them get through that barrier? You know, because it's always, especially it's monetary, so there's always like a value for value, as opposed to what is really the thing that's driving this person to want to make this deal.
Well, and you bring up a really good point in that, you know, what was this guy that you were talking to trying to do to start his day? You know, how was he trying to characterize his day? And in a larger view, there's always something more important than the deal. And the first thing is, and then people are driven by a lot of the same things, no matter what the circumstances are. So in really broad general terms, there's 3 types of animals, if you will, in the world, human beings, in our approach to conflict. Fight, flight, make friends. Assertive, an analyst, accommodator. Fight, flight, make friends. You know, the assertive is a fighter. The analyst is the flight person because they see fighting as extremely inefficient and not worth the cost. Make friends, the accommodator. The caveman, when they faced a threat on the jungle path, they either fought it, they ran from it, or they made friends with it. Those are the 3 types broadly across all genders, across all ethnicities, across all religions. The Black Swan Group has got no shortage of data to back this up. We've tested people. There's a way to test which of those 3, quote, tribes that you might fall into. And we've seen consistently from China to Europe to Latin America to Africa, breaking into 3 types. India, it doesn't matter. You know, the nice thing about the international business schools that I've taught in is they're international. You got every ethnicity, every nationality. And Harvard has found the same thing. This idea is derived from some stuff that I learned when I both went through Harvard Law School's class as a student and then taught there. Same idea, 3 types. So the fight type, the assertive type, a great example of the most visible fight-oriented negotiator on earth is Donald Trump. Whether you like Trump or whether you hate him, he's a poster child for the assertive type. I'm a natural born assertive. We really want to know that you heard what we had to say. What we have to say is so important that you hearing what we have to say is more important actually than the deal. And we happen to be half the deals we're willing to make once you've heard us out. And everybody knows, you know, a boss that they worked for somewhere along the line, and they may say, you know, the boss may not have done what I always wanted to do, but my boss was always willing to listen to me. You know, there's a tremendous desire to be heard. And the assertive types, it's more important than actually making the deal. We're highly collaborative once we've been heard. Now, the analytical type, the flight type, they just want to know that they explored all the options. You know, they're data-loving creatures. They love data. Like if you disagree, if you see something differently than an analyst does, you don't want to say I disagree. You want to say I've got some different data. And they go like, ooh, really? I love data. What is it? Tell it to me. Makes them happy. The make friends type. They want a pleasant interaction. The outcome is not as important as the fact that we had a great and pleasant interaction. Now, the guy that and since the world splits up into thirds, there's each type, there's a 1 in 3 chance that's who you're feeling faced with. You're the guy selling those paintings in a DR. There's a 1 in 3 chance that you were talking to an accommodator, a make friends type guy. He wants to start his day off positively. He wants to have a positive, pleasant interaction with you. He doesn't want the haggling process to be ugly or name calling or dramatic. I'll walk away if I can't get my price. If you're positive in your interaction with him, then he feels good about the interaction. And that's as much compensation for him as the money is. And you increase your chances of making a deal with somebody like that if you get a feel for that. Now, how do you find out which type is across the table from you? Well, you experiment with it a little bit. You look for the signs. The Donald Trump is always going to look like Donald Trump. That's an easy spot. The analytical types are going to come off. If they're analytical, they're really up in their head. They're thinking about stuff. They inadvertently come off as cold and distant. And what they really are is they're just thinking like crazy. Now, the accommodator type, what will happen is both the analyst and the assertive, if they have any sense, they see how many more deals the accommodator type makes. Not necessarily better. And in many cases, the deals that an accommodator make aren't great deals, but they make a lot of deals. And so analysts and assertives who can learn say, if I smile and I'm pleasant, I make more deals. Let me do that. My daughter-in-law is the director of marketing in my company, Maya Voss, my daughter-in-law. We also refer to analysts as assassins. And an analyst, they'll be happy to shoot you with a sniper rifle from 1,000 yards out so that you never know what happened. So, and my daughter-in-law, everybody that meets her, they think she's an accommodator because she's overwhelmingly pleasant. She smiles and she laughs, and sometimes she doesn't even make a counteroffer. She just smiles and she laughs, and the people she's talking to start lowering their price because she smiles and she laughs all the time. And Brandon and I, my son, her husband, we tease her all the time. We call her the assassin because she makes killer deals, and she learned. And she's a thinker. She analyzes the heck out of everything. So she learned that if she smiled and laughed a lot along with her analytical skills, then she just makes these monster deals on our behalf.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Wow, that's pretty good advice.
Yeah, that's good insight. It keeps it basic enough where I think anybody can understand it, that you can get to who you're talking to. I talk a lot with the groups here about trying to keep a beginner's mindset. And trying not to be too much of an expert all the time. And I think
that's good stuff. That's really good stuff.
Yeah, I think you have to decide when to use one or the other, right? Like if I'm in the business for 20 years, I can't just go off with my past experiences where I have to try to keep a beginner's mindset to see what happens. There's something you had in the book that really made me think of that. And you start talking about an FBI negotiation from 1981 where they were negotiating with somebody who took hostages, and they thought that he wanted something out of the deal. The truth of the matter is he just was there to die that day, but they never had any kind of experience with that, so they negotiated the wrong way. I looked and I was like, that's expert mindset. Like they didn't take they're just going off their past and they're not looking at beginner's mindset. So how do you teach people who to choose the right path in those situations? Like, when is it a good time to go for your experience, and when is it time to look at it as something completely brand new and keep an open mind to what that person's feeding in front of you?
Yeah, good question. I mean, I think the beginner's mindset is a way to always start out. A different way of putting it, which is a complete synonym, With the beginner's mindset, you're really curious and you're really open-minded. And curiosity is an emotional intelligence hack. Like people talk all the time, like, how do I not get upset? You know, how do I not get into a negative mind frame? You know, how do you keep in a positive mind frame? Well, you can't get angry when you're curious. It's not possible. It's an immediate wall barrier that protects you from anger when you're genuinely curious. So it's a positive frame of mind. Now, Sean Acker is a Harvard psychologist that did this great TED talk. I think the title of it is The Happiness Advantage. And this is my source of data. Sean says that you're 31% smarter in a positive frame of mind. So if curiosity is positive, to be curious is also to put you in your optimum mental state, 31% smarter in a positive frame of mind. All this stuff begins to come very closely to what Stephen Kotler, who's a flow expert, would call the mindset of flow. Flow is your highly positive. Flow also, your pattern recognition increases. You see what's going on faster. And your mental endurance is much higher. You know, the flow is this term for X Games athletes who are doing superhuman feats.
I read that. I read his list. I read his list book, by the way. His new book, which was The Art of Impossible. So yeah, so it's familiar to me what you talk about. It's a great book.
Yeah. So Stephen is like, all right, so how do we apply this to our lives, not just athletes, so that we have better lives? And it all really stems from what you talked about before, the beginner's mindset, which is a positive, curious mindset. And then all these other scientists are telling us why that advice is such great advice. Now, do you switch over to the expert mindset? Well, after the beginner's mindset and you've discovered what's going on, you've been open to seeing things. Now, maybe you take your expertise and the value that you bring to the table just based on your track record up to that point. Now you can make better decisions once you've gathered the information by starting out with the beginner's mindset.
That's
that.
awesome.
Love
Yeah, it's
that.
awesome. It's really, truly. I'm going to add that into my trainings.
I'm taking notes. I'm going to pivot a little bit, ask a personal question. Chris, everyone knows you as like top 10 bestseller Audible books, former FBI negotiator. You've been interviewed by like the top podcasters. What scares Chris Voss? What like worries you? This fearless man that everyone sees on camera. Are there things that worry you or scare you in life in general?
You know, I got a lot of the same struggles that everybody has, is because, you know, our human nature wiring is our survival wiring, you know, our default wiring. Our default mindset is negative. And, you know, I'm worried that I don't override my default wiring enough. If I get into, if I let my default negative mindset get out of control because I'm tired, because it's late, because I didn't eat well, you know, for whatever reason, I worry that I inadvertently hurt people by being too abrupt. I mean, by and large, in the question you asked me in physical senses, I'm not scared of a lot anymore. Because I believe that the universe is largely on our side. And I think that our biggest challenge is getting our own survival negativity wiring under control. And then also some of the best things that have ever happened to me in my life happen as a result of really negative stuff. Like I got, you know, the reason I became a negotiator was really because of significant knee injuries to my knee. And reconstructive knee surgery, you know, tearing my knee up, one would think would be a negative thing, but it led to great stuff. I got passed over for promotion in the FBI in New York, and that sent me in another direction, which I became a full-time hostage negotiator. And I had adventures and experiences that I never thought I would have had because they passed me over in New York. I got passed over for promotion again in the FBI towards the end of my career. And it caused me to decide to leave the FBI, and I ended up leaving at the perfect time. I mean, thank God I left when I did, because all the things that had the system that was very supportive of me had started to go away through no fault of anybody's. It's just things changed. So the negative things that have happened to me in my life have all led to far better things, which means I'm not that scared of that much going wrong, because, I always see it as a sign for better things on the way. So I worry a little bit about me letting my own human nature shortcomings get in the way and hold back what I could do, not just in my life, but with the people that I work with. You want to go fast, go alone. You want to go far, go as a team. My team is very important to me.
That's very powerful. That's awesome. Yeah.
I have I love playing chess. A lot of us do it here. And when I keep watching the masterclass, I see your way of negotiating very similar to chess, where you start off, right, with your labeling, right? Then you follow up, I believe it's I love the late night voice thing. I think that it works
DJ K late night voice.
It works every time.
Yeah. I would agree. I would agree with you.
So it goes from labeling to having the voice and your tone and being able to have that late night voice, right? Back into a celebrated question, and maybe labeling if you still need it, and then a celebrated question again. But do you feel like that's what you're doing? Like it's a little bit of like I forgot the name of the Netflix show that it's about chess now. But does it feel like that when you're in a very deep negotiating, that it seems like you're doing everything very strategic, but you're following your steps, but you know exactly how to get to the checkmate that you're looking for?
Well, I'll give you a politician's answer: yes and no, and I'll tell you which part is yes and which part is no, because usually they stop there and they don't tell you anymore, right?
Right.
All right, so yeah, you should think a few moves ahead. You should think 2 to 3 moves ahead, max, no more than that.
Okay.
Now, chess players, if you're playing chess, you guys are thinking like 17 moves ahead. I mean, the complexity of the game and the great chess players, I recently watched that Netflix show, The Queen's Gambit, I think is what
That's it. That's what I was trying to remember.
It was great. It was great. Phenomenal. Yep. But here's why any more than 3 moves ahead is too much. Because take chess and attach all the pieces to each other with springs. Those are human emotions. A long time ago, a guy named Herb Cohen wrote a book about negotiation. He said, negotiation is the use of information and power in a web of tension. The web of tension is human emotions. Now, in a chess game, if all the pieces are connected via springs or emotions, then every time you make a move, the emotions tug on the other pieces. You move the queen and the knight starts to get scared. And then you move a pawn and the knight gets even more scared. And pretty soon the knight is not on the same square anymore. So there's a web of tension among human beings. And with each move, the tension, the emotions either tighten or loosen, which means after 3 moves, the board is going to be reset, which is why when you've thought past 3 moves, that was all bad analysis because the board has changed. So you should think 2 or 3 moves ahead, but usually never more than 3 because the chessboard's gonna reset based on emotional reactions.
That's almost similar to what we were speaking about the beginner's mindset with expert mindset, where it's like, I guess the beginner's mindset is like you're keeping it to 2 to 3, and then once you're doing a little bit more on the analytical side, that's when you're using more of the expert brain that can just lead to a bad result eventually, then, right?
Yeah, or it can see how it's changed, and now you're going to reset. Now some of the emotions become predictable because all people react in patterns. Some of those patterns are predictable. People are more overreact emotionally to loss. I remember hearing a long time ago that 70% of buy decisions are made to avoid a loss, not to accomplish a gain. 70% of buy decisions. Now that squares up with all the other data on loss. If a loss thinks twice as much as an equivalent gain, more than likely somebody's making a decision to buy or to negotiate a deal or to sell based on their perception of loss, which gets us back to the use of tactical empathy, because you got to figure out what their loss perception is.
Right.
And you use empathy to figure that out. You start making educated guesses, and you start throwing those educated guesses out verbally. And then they tell you whether you're right or you're wrong. And if you're doing it as sort of a guesswork frame, which is what labels are a way to guess, like it seems like there's something bothering you. That's a way for me to guess that something is bothering you, instead of saying what's bothering you, which triggers your brain a completely different way. If I'm guessing, you're more likely to correct me. And that's the information I want. And then since I got into this collaborative guessing, correcting relationship, now I might be able to change your thinking, because how I got into the interaction was collaborative, and you're more open to influence as opposed to me using leverage on you.
That's what
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What would you say is your hardest negotiation that you ever had to do? Because I know the examples that you gave in the masterclass and there and in the book as well. But do you feel like you have one that you can say it's like, this was the hardest one that I had to be able to, that it tested all of the skills and all the experience that you had your whole life, and you were like, this is one that is going to be hard to get out of?
In general terms, like when I know when the other side is starting to ask stuff of me because they're trying to exploit me, or I know they're using me, or we've had some conversations about people over television shows, and in the entertainment industry, they're going to slide a contract across the table to you that is asking for not just your firstborn, but your firstborn's firstborn. And it's just insane. And I have a tendency, when somebody starts giving me really negative terms, I'll get upset. There was another deal we had a relationship with a company about 4 years ago where the president of the company was lying to us. And I have a low tolerance for that. Now, the interaction was very beneficial to us at the time. We knew it was not going to be a long-term relationship, no more than 2 to 3 years. But what we were getting out of it at the time was very valuable for us. But I still don't like being lied to. There's a country saying that don't urinate on my shoes and tell me it's raining. And when somebody knows they're lying to me, and that'll put me in a negative mindset. And then if I'm in a negative mindset, I'm not negotiating well. And in that particular one, I got angry at the president on the other side, and my son Brandon finished out the negotiations because he said, "Look, you get mad over this, and we can't let you. It ain't helping us."
Yeah.
So for me, difficult negotiations is when it's to our advantage to make the deal, but I don't particularly like the people on the other side.
Yeah. I can relate to everything you just said big time. You gave me a good transition. I have a question for you. We try to talk about winner's mindset all the time, right? And how do we stay in a winning mindset, and not just to play the game, but to play the game to win all the time? And you have a story in your book. You had a few negotiations with the same leader in the Philippines, I believe. And I think one of them, you weren't really allowed to negotiate the way you wanted to negotiate, and it didn't go the right way. And you say in the book, I believe, that after that, you really changed your mindset to you were going to win the negotiations. You were going to do what you needed to do to winning. I mean, how do you keep that mindset, and what does that mindset kind of mean to you, like having a winner's mindset?
Yeah, well, I think the quote most recently, I think it was Colin McGregor, the MMA fighter, the Irish guy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He said, "I win or I learn." And that's actually the reality of the situation. And you actually learn more and faster when you don't win, because winning is really celebratory. And, there's a high from winning, but you don't actually get any smarter when you win. You get smarter when what some people would refer to as a loss. or things didn't go well, or things went sideways, and it tells you that you have more to learn. And I don't know of any case when the value of the lesson the return on investment didn't exceed the initial cost. Like the Philippines case that you're talking about, people got killed, and they got killed because we didn't know how to take the entire team into account on the other side. People got killed because individuals in a terrorist group that were not involved in the negotiations disrupted their own deal. And so, how do we account for the people on the other side of the table? We got to find a way to influence through the table of those people. And subsequently, we improved our negotiation strategy and saved lives in other kidnappings and got people out sooner in other kidnappings. So the overall return on investment, Martin Burnham didn't die in vain. His death ended up causing a lot of other people to live and survive, which is probably very little consolation to his family, but it helped the world in the long run. So you win or you learn. Our director of business development, now the Black Swan team is a phenomenal team. I am proud as heck of our team. So the first real hire we had in sales or business development is a young lady named Davy Johnson. And Davy is a learning human being. And as an example of how she learns, she's a Mormon. She went on a mission, right after, I think they go right after college. Going on a Mormon mission is like joining the army. It's a hell of an experience. I mean, phenomenal what they learn and the discipline that they learn. So they're going to send her to Ecuador, and she didn't speak Spanish at all. And she's got to learn Spanish. And the person that's coaching her is saying like, it's probably going to take you about 1.5 years to get to the point where you're pretty good at it. Maybe a little more than conversational, but if you're immersed. And the woman that's coaching says, and the bottom line is you're going to have to make 10,000 mistakes. And Davy says, oh, I'll just make them sooner. And she went out of her way to talk as much as she possibly could. And when she made a mistake in grammar, it didn't humiliate her. She just went, oh, I'm getting smarter faster. She was conversational in 8 weeks. In the amount of time that somebody else told her it was going to take 18 months, because she approached it with this joy to learn and no embarrassment over the mistakes, and it accelerated her learning. So mistakes are learning accelerators, especially if you take a positive attitude towards them.
And she took the ego out of it too. There's no ego, there's no insecurity. I just really want to get better. So that's a really good point.
Yeah. I have a question for you. So we talked about emotional empathy, emotional currency, labeling, mirroring, all these different tactics. For the average person watching this podcast, how can they start putting all that into practice today? Like, should they go to a Starbucks? Should they call up a friend? Yeah. Like, what's some practical advice you can give us?
Yeah, well, first of all, start one skill at a time, whether you want to start on labels or mirrors, and then just, make an hour in the day. That's the only thing you're going to do. No matter whoever talks to you, all you're going to do is mirror. You're going to have mirror hour just to get your repetitions in, just to experiment with it, because it's going to feel awkward initially. And the first hour or so, the first time you're doing it, it'll tire you out a little bit. So designate an hour, just like you would designate an hour to work out on anything else. Make it your lunch hour, and then go out and in conversations that don't matter to you, or where if it doesn't go well, it was just a learning experience. Again, Starbucks person, mirror the Starbucks person, mirror the grocery store clerk, mirror anybody or label them. Labels are probably an easier way to start out with, because you can do a label based on what you see. You can walk up to the Starbucks barista and say, looks like you're having a good day. if that's the way they look.
Yeah.
Or if they look like the boss has been yelling at them, or they got other stuff on their mind, walk up and say, looks like it's a tough day. And just see what happens. And just do it for an hour. And then once you've done it a few times, now next week, instead of labeling for an hour over lunch on Monday, make Monday label day, because you will have gotten some practice in. Let yourself get better a little at a time. When we're coaching people in a Black Swan method, we say, look, just get 1 degree better today. Just 1 degree, just a tiny little bit. You start to accumulate that, and Derek, who's our best coach, says 1 degree at a time, and then suddenly water turns into steam and becomes more powerful with just a 1 degree change. Pretty soon you're going to hit that breakthrough moment. And if you have a day where you didn't get 1 degree better, well, you don't beat yourself up for it because you didn't lose that much. I start over tomorrow. You know what? I didn't have a great day today. I was tired. I didn't eat well. I didn't exercise, but today wasn't a big loss. I can start over tomorrow. So it's a very forgiving mindset. And you'll find in a short period of time, you've really gone a long way if you're only trying to get a little bit better each day.
Love it.
That's
1
good.
hour a
It's
day.
It's great advice.
Yep.
I'm gonna let you. I know Chris is limited for time, so I'm gonna let you close because I'm sure you got something you want to ask.
Oh yeah, 100%. You know, a lot of people when it comes to their personal life, it seems like I was just listening to an audio this morning where I think it was Eric Thomas, and he was talking about we're always looking for guarantees outside of it. Like a lot of people sign up to a business class or something, or one of these get rich like quick schemes and stuff. And they're like, oh, in 30 days you'll make your money or your money back or something like, right? And so they're always looking for that guarantee. But then he says, but we never really look for that guarantee for ourselves. Like, how many times do you hold yourself accountable to that point where you're really going and you're like, man, where do I take the money out of the investment that I did for myself? Do you ever feel that, like, how important is it for you to even use that same negotiating skill that you use for other people, even for yourself? You know, we're trying to get yourself out of the predicaments or the placements that you put yourself in your mentality, because a lot of it, since it's most of the time it's emotional, do you ever feel like you have some negotiations? Are you even trying to reach with yourself to reach a true conclusion, to get yourself to a higher level? Because you've been negotiating whether you like it or not when you're telling yourself that you're not going to go and do this or you're not going to go and do this. How is it that you become aware of that for yourself and how you take yourself to the next level? I don't know if that makes sense, but you know.
No, that's a really good question. And everybody's got to do that because like I mentioned before, our natural mindset, our default mindset, survival mindset is negative. And we inherited that from the cavemen. I mean, the optimistic caveman got eaten by the saber-toothed tiger and doesn't have any descendants. You know, the optimistic caveman said, you know, I know last time we passed this cave, Chris went inside and he never came out, but I'm an optimist, so I'm going to go in. You know, pessimistic caveman survived. So everybody's challenged with our default wiring. Survival wiring is negative. Success wiring is positive. Think of it as hygiene. Think of it as oral hygiene. You need positive affirmations a couple of times a day, every day, just like you need to brush your teeth twice a day, every day. Wait a minute, I brushed my teeth yesterday. Do I have to do it again today? Yes, you do. Do I have to negotiate to override my negative thinking every day? Yes, you do. The cliche gratitude journal, first thing in the morning, 3 things you're grateful for, is part of that success hygiene, mental hygiene. What happens if you get in the middle of the day and you find yourself in a negative mindset? Which I do. Now, the really counterintuitive way to fix it in the moment is simply verbally identifying negative emotions is the most effective way to diffuse them and make them go away. And so I don't say that if I feel fear and if I'm concerned, if I'm anxious, you know, fear comes in a lot of disguises. Anxious, concern are the most common disguises of what is fear. I don't tell myself, look, don't be scared. Stop being a baby. Don't be a crybaby. I don't tell myself, don't be anything. What I literally do is I say to myself, I'm afraid. I'm afraid. I'm afraid. I'm not afraid. I call it out 3 times in a row, and I feel it go away every single time I call it out. I can feel it diminishing internally if I call it out fearlessly, because calling out a negative, and there's brain science that backs it up. Simply identifying, labeling negatives diffuses them. The brain science is indisputable, and it's been done a number of different times. It diminishes the negativity in your brain by simply calling it out every time. Sometimes calling it out once will do. Sometimes you got to call it out 7 times, but it reduces it every time. So when I've got to negotiate with myself and I sense negativity, I know it's fear in disguise. So I'll just call it straight out, and that's the most effective way to get it to go away.
Wow.
Wow.
I'm ready to go and negotiate.
Yeah,
right
so am
now.
I. I'm going to Starbucks after this. So.
Yeah, we're gonna start doing it that way. But we want to thank you so much.
Tremendously, thank you.
I've been a super fan for a while, and it's actually a great honor for me to be able to actually be here and ask you some questions and learn a little bit more in depth. And I know for all of us, it's definitely like a great honor, because we really appreciate what you do and what you continue to do, because it helps us out in our businesses, it helps us out in our daily life, and it helps us personally, with the people that we interact with, our relationships.
Absolutely.
So thank you so much for being a part of this. We really do appreciate it so much.
No, you guys are a lot of fun to talk to. I'd like to tell people how they can follow up with my company, how I might be able to help.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Please do.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right. So our website is blackswanltd.com. Now, if you want to be a Black Swan, if you want to learn the Black Swan method, wherever you are, we'll meet you wherever you are in your journey. On our website, we got a lot of free stuff. A lot of free stuff. A lot of people get a long way on just the book. And for example, our newsletter, which comes out every Tuesday morning, it's free. But its value really isn't that it's free. Its value is that it's concise and it's actionable. You don't have to read 10 articles. We got ideas that you can put into place and use that same day. Take the free stuff. Get as far as you can on the complimentary stuff. The masterclass, as you guys pointed out, is a great supplement. The other thing about the masterclass is it's ridiculously cheap. I mean, what you get for what you pay for in masterclass just boggles my mind. Wherever you are, we can meet you there. And then you get to the point where you want our more advanced training, which is expensive. But what you've gotten from us for free will put you in a position where you can start investing in yourself even more heavily. And as you guys know, at the end of the day, the investment's in you and your success, your long-term relationships, and the people around you. I mean, I'm talking to you guys are a team right now. You want to go fast, go alone. You want to go far, go as a team. You guys are going far as a team right now. You know you need people around you that are like-minded, and you can accomplish that much more. I mean, good luck to all of your listeners. All of you deserve success. All of you do.
We appreciate it, Chris, and I'm definitely going to do some more work with you guys from the site. I'm going to commit to that even live right now. So I think you'll see some more of us there for sure. But Chris, besides that, what's the best way to get in touch with you? Is it still social media, or is it just contact you through the company? What's your best way to contact you?
Well, I'm on Instagram at the FBI Negotiator. If you want to follow up with the company, the best email is info@blackswanltd.com, BLACKSWANLTD.com, just like the website. And I got a great team. We want you to get better.
You guys are doing amazing, and they're doing a great job getting you in front of more people, because I think that your voice is powerful. And again, we just appreciate you coming on, and thank you for just some more insight.
Yeah, my pleasure. It was fun talking to you guys today. I really enjoyed it.
Hopefully we do it again.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you so much, Chris.
Thank you so much.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
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 So there you have it, Chris Voss. That was an amazing interview. We have some great interviews coming after this. I want you guys to stay tuned. We're on all your streaming platforms, Apple, Spotify, Google, Breaker. Also, subscribe to our YouTube channel, Disruptors Network, for more videos and this video. And you have to watch this again. I learned so much just from talking to him, and he was so open about what's going on in his life and what tactics he uses, and I wrote a ton of stuff down from this. So check us out. The links are in our bio. We also have some new merch, Disruptors Network caps, t-shirts, wristbands. The links are all in my bio. Check it out. See you soon. Our next guest on the podcast is going to be Kara Golden, who's the CEO of Hint. That interview was unbelievable. Make sure you hit us up.